Good morning, friends, and welcome to What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph, the weekly run-through of what is in Australia's largest selling newspaper. And I'd like to just a quick explanation. Some of you have been hitting the page this morning looking for this video early, which is very pleasing. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Fundamentally, the newspaper gets delivered at around 8:30 on a Sunday morning in this neck of the woods. So I just can't start the video earlier, and then it takes a couple of hours to put together and to take out most of the superfluous ums, not all of them, obviously. And, see, that was an not an Yes. Takes some time. Realistically, can't get out before 11, and I'm pushing to get out before 12 most days. And I apologise. If the paper was delivered in the small hours of the morning, as it used to be in them good old days, then I would happily have this hitting the internet by 9 and getting on with my day. As it is, my partner is exceedingly and increasingly grumpy about the amount of time I spend on this, and we're just going to have to push through that until we reach some sort of breaking point. So, what's in the paper today? What do Rupert and his billionaire buddies want you to be thinking about instead of important stuff? Used to be you could buy a newspaper and you'd think, admittedly with some biases, you might actually be across the issues of the day, but that was long ago and far away, wasn't it? Oh, look, blonde woman in a dress that can't honestly tell if it's white or pink in this light. I think it looked pretty white on that camera shot. So, is Carrie on Nine's Today Dream Team? It's the talk of the town, they say. Channel 9 plotting to lure 10 network darling Carrie Bickmore to its flagging Today show. And in what they hope will prove a small screen dream team, they want the host they dumped, Carl Stefanovic, to be at her side. Amy Harris reports on page 10 and 11. So a third of the front page, 2 pages near the front of the paper on who's hosting a crappy morning show that very few people with any sense watch anyway. Congratulations, Telegraph. Complete bloody irrelevance. In the top strap, we also have One Giant Leap. The GWS Giants win nail-biter to make first ever grand final, which is arguably considerably more interest and much more likely to be the talk of the town than is Carrie Bickmore looking good in her headshot. And oh, look, she even they've got a matching Carl Stefanovic's stupid outfit. And on that happy note, let's plough on through the paper, shall we? Exclusive. So that means the police have given them the story. 45 new covert cameras to catch you TXTing. Because that extra E would have totally killed the front page, wouldn't it? I'd love to see what their style guide has to say on that. The News Limited style guide is actually quite a high point of the English language and is widely used in newsrooms outside of News Limited. Available in bookshops and has a lot of very good points to make on the correct usage of the English language. It's a pity it then gets deployed to make the Sunday Telegraph. Drivers using their mobile phones will be targeted by 45 new dedicated cameras. So that's across the whole of New South Wales, so your chances of ever driving past one are pretty low. They're due to be in operation from December in a zero tolerance... so a failed policing model that sounds cool will get reused because it sounds cool. Only we probably won't actually be using it. We'll just be rolling out the catchy slogan. In a zero-tolerance approach, the government has pledged that unlike speed cameras, there will be no warning signs to alert drivers to the devices, to be rolled out over 3 years. I reckon users receiving tickets will be plotting those on Google Maps pretty fast. Follows a trial of 3 cameras that caught 100,000 drivers in 6 months. Ignoring concerns over accusations of revenue raising, Transport Minister Andrew Constance said, "I don't give a stuff because people won't have to pay the fine if they do the right thing." Sounds about like robust corruption fighting bodies looking into politicians, doesn't it? I'd actually like to see more done about people texting while they drive and just generally having their phones in their fat hands up to their fat faces while they should be paying attention to the road. But I'd kind of like it to be actual police on the road delivering public admonitions to people. Don't even need to give them the fines, although if it pays for the cops' time, that's great. It's the public shaming that I'm really after, which you just don't get with this scheme, although they do get the revenue. What else we got? Mixed picks. This is where the editor tells us what he thinks is the best that his paper has to offer. It's always a grim trudge. All you need to know about buying your first homes, if first home buyers are reading this crappy rag. They're all on property websites. Number 2, how do I make my man feel better about his size? Sex columnist Susie Godson on a problem that haunts many bedrooms and has for the entire duration of human history, and yet number 2 in a newspaper. Liam Payne living the dream. The former One Directioner opens up about life after a boy band and why he's still not ready to release his first debut album. So someone has done nothing, but they need to fill some space. That's 3. Oh yeah, 4 is a nice use of white text on a grey background. San Choi Bao made simple. Try our new food-proof recipes. Our guide to binging. Our experts help you choose your next show. So this is funny because they're realising that no one's actually using the TV guide, and now they're hoping to do recommendations. And I actually have a podcast called Give Me the Remote, which is also your guide to binging. So if you prefer my taste to the Sunday Telegraphs, definitely check out the Give Me the Remote podcast. You can hear me say a great many other times while giving considered and humorous opinions, and that has a co-host, so it's not just me. What to do with your kids these school holidays? Same stuff as last school holidays, I'm guessing. Pride of Australia, it's time to nominate the unsung heroes in our community. And in the glossy lift out for people who can't afford to buy Vogue, Sophie Monk, Rachel Griffiths, Carrie Bickmore again, and more inside a star-studded Stella magazine. So we've got 2/3 of a page devoted to Sophie Monk wearing what looks like a men's 1980s power suit, saying, I know this is the one, he's just got to propose. If he's out, I give up, I really do. No pressure, sir, whoever you may be. Good luck. Parties over for bikies cruises. Outlaw motorcycle gangs have lost their last remaining safe haven, party boats. Fed up with bikies congregating on party cruises, police have embraced a novel legal strategy to stop them hiring pleasure craft ahead of the summer boating season. Boat owners who suspect bikies of making a booking can contact police for background checks. If suspicions are confirmed, the booking can be cancelled or the bikies can be forcibly removed by officers. Now, if I owned a small business built on hiring my boat out, I'm not sure I'd be wanting to have a brawl involving bikies and police, particularly when there's not a lot to stop the bikies coming back with firebombs at a to-be-determined dark night of the future. Interesting that it's a problem. Well done, Telegraph News, on page 3, which is quite good by your standards. Sorry, Sunday Telegraph, not to be confused with the Daily. They are related, but distinct. Domain's got a whole page, trying to sell us funny-shaped beds. Right, another page on this tip from the cops. Camera cops go mobile. Not more Miranda Wood. 2 articles by Miranda Wood. Oh, we got one on the grieving mum. Down the bottom, Tay-Tay scratched from the cup. This is Taylor Swift changing her plans. Was going to appear at the Melbourne Cup. Then there was a bunch of fans saying horse racing's cruel, which I would have thought Ms. Swift was across. Could even be she said yes just so she could say no and draw attention to it. She can be quite clever like that. Anyway, and the Cup organisers are trying to spin it as just a scheduling conflict when it's really a huge crushing embarrassment. It'll be interesting to see how they get. Okay, 2 dead in wreckage, 2 men. Oh, this is the light aircraft crash in northern New South Wales. We've got people wearing lots of white linen talking about being a teenage drug dealer. This is a Brendan Hill story. Not a gangster, but a businessman who loved money. It's very hard to tell the difference between those two. There's a lovely photo, Matthew Doyle with wife Kelsey, who is not accused of any wrongdoing at a christening. They have blurred out the baby's face because New South Wales has laws about that. Right, here's a great piece of Telegraph headline writing. A stellar award for our glossy magazine. What is the name of this glossy magazine? Oh, it is Stellar, because it's about stars. God, there's some, it's just solid gold humour all the way down there, isn't it? School to drug test and search students. Prestigious eastern suburbs Jewish school will test and search students for drugs and e-cigarettes. Moriah College. Sounds like they've got a problem. I'm going to be sending my kid there. We got 2 pages on ScoMo. One enchanted evening in DC. I mean, I've lived in Washington. There are some obviously very swish parts of it. There's a lot of very manky parts of it. It's not exactly Paris for its enchanted evenings, I can tell you that. Melania has crafted a banquet fit for Aussie royalty, says Miranda Devine. Well, to be fair, the sub-editor who wrote the headline has mistaken the Prime Minister for royalty. God, what a gushing They do mention Andrew Huff writing, controversial Sydney-based evangelical pastor Brian Houston has denied he was vetoed by the White House after being invited to yesterday's prestigious black tie state dinner by Prime Minister Scott Morrison. In a diplomatic case of was he or wasn't he, American media said Mr. Morrison invited the Hillsong Church founder to the Washington event only to be overruled by US officials. Mr. Houston, thought to be a mentor to the Prime Minister, said the reports were false. I've had no invitation to the White House and I've had no discussion with the Prime Minister or anyone else about this, he told the Sunday Telegraph. Hillsong Church received no inquiry from any party as to my details or availability. As far as I'm concerned, this is a baseless rumour and totally false news. It is extremely disappointing that media outlets spread these unfounded rumours and attempts to link this untrue story to the Royal Commission are unconscionable. That's a very odd sentence. The Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous sources, claimed Mr. Morrison agreed to leave the 65-year-old pastor at home after several rounds of discussions across 14 time zones between Washington and Canberra. To say that Washington and Canberra are a long way apart is inarguable and quite obvious. To say that the discussions were held in all of the 14 time zones that separate them seems unlikely. But hey. Well, though that was the Wall Street Journal with that piece of crappy writing, so there you go, it goes around. It remained unclear why the US decision was reportedly made, but the Child Sex Abuse Royal Commission found the high-profile preacher mishandled allegations that his father was a pedophile. The federal government would not confirm if Mr. Houston had been invited to the dinner. Invitations to state dinner are entirely at the discretion of the White House, a spokesman said. I've done a few government media responses in my time. I generally try and attribute comments to a spokesperson, but there you go. That's 2019 in the Morrison operation. Okay, so Jock Palfreyman, languishing in Bulgarian prison, is hoping Australia will sort him out for a passport. You would have thought the embassy there could provide him with temporary travel documents, wouldn't you? Interesting little story that Yazidi refugees in Australia trying to get victims of crime compensation for crimes committed by Australian-born Islamic State fighters have failed in that bid, which is sad for them, but it would be quite the can of worms if they had gone that way. SOS Save Our Show. How is the Today Show the Sunday Telegraph show? Why do they feel this affinity for it? I mean, I guess they just like the amount of gossip it generates, that it fills up pages instead of... Because we still haven't had anything about the climate strikes. And also, I mean, Middle East is a bit scary. I'd highly recommend, if you Google The Drive, The War Zone, there's sort of a sub-blog of The Drive website, which does war correspondence, and they've got the satellite images of the strikes on the Saudi oil refineries and the accuracy with which the same spot was hit in every single piece of the facility is showing off. It's just signaling we can hit hotel windows, I think. Anyway. Why talk about that when you can talk about Karl Stefanovich and put him in another overly tight blazer? I mean, seriously, for a man who can spend as much time as possible grooming on Karl Stefanovich, look at the gape on that blazer. He can barely do the buttons up. And he can afford a new blazer, and he can afford to go to the gym every day. He's got the time to go to the gym every day. And even he can't fit into his damn blazer. Anthony Galloway has a story on the growing epidemic of Australian children using smartphones, tablets and other digital technology, which will be investigated by a new World First Research Centre. No doubt all of them on their phones all the time. Now we've got 2 pages to the downfall of a high-flyer cop. Bodyguard for the PM, police chief's right-hand man. So what brought Gary Fay undone? Natalie O'Brien reveals all. Knowing a few close personal protection police, lovely though they all are, it's not really a high-flying kind of gig. Right, so brought down by an out-of-control gambling addiction. He's looking to rebuild his life. Visitors to Fraser Island have been urged not to feed the dingoes, no matter how hungry they look, which is a useful warning, but I'm, again, not sure if it's news. And then we have an article, let's say bye-bye to paying the rent. As in, buy property, kids, buy property. The funny thing is there isn't actually that much real estate advertising in the Telegraph. It's like they've got this vestigial attachment to an industry that no longer actually supports them, but they just don't know how to stop filling the pages with the same stuff they've always filled the pages with. All right, we've got a page for Jennifer Lopez wearing a dress. Jail for bosses who kill workers. Cowboy construction bosses whose dodgy safety standards cause the death or serious injury of workers will be sent to jail under new workplace laws. Crooks have found new ways to steal flash cars. Crime gangs are raking in millions from rorts in which prestige makes, including Mercedes, Audis, BMWs, and Lamborghinis. I normally wouldn't put a Lamborghini in quite the same class as those others, myself. I bought on finance, then made to disappear. So it's financing rackets. That's kind of cool. Victimless crime there. Well, unless you're a small car financing company on trying to make it doing business with slightly shady characters to get ahead, in which case there's a life lesson for you. Nomads helping hands never get old. Grey nomads planting trees to help battling farmers. Grey nomads might be a major newspaper buying sector for them. So a gentleman called Mohammed Boumeri has gone viral with his comments on fish and warrants half of page 19. He has catchphrases. Apparently he is paid to attend weddings to say them. You can listen to Mo in action at dailytelegraph.com.au. So Greg Hunt is pledging anti-competitive rules that prevent new chemists opening with 1.5 kilometres of an existing chemist to remain in place for the next 5 years under a community pharmacy agreement. He's also apparently promising income certainty. So that's a real transformation of the chemists into a rentier class, isn't it? 2 pages of Harvey Norman trying to con you into spending too much money on a too large TV to get some sort of vicarious thrill through the football. Although, in fairness to Fox News, they are playing every game of the Rugby World Cup, and I thoroughly enjoyed my 8 hours of continuous rugby yesterday. Drought torment for 2 more years, apparently, but more severe Sydney storms. It's almost as if there's a crisis in climate change underway, but we can't quite bring ourselves to say it in the Telegraph, so we'll just have apocalyptic weather with no mention of why or the fact that we could actually do something about it. But we'd just have to make some unbelievably wealthy coal billionaires slightly less wealthy. And we're not going to do that. So the lawsuit against Ray Hadley for historic bullying. Interesting, Annette Sharp, the gossip columnist, has got a byline on a news piece here, so she's obviously following this particularly closely. The complainant has been sent off for psychiatric assessment. Pride of Australia is searching for heroes. Another page of Jerry Harvey. Page of Flight Centre. So a chef, Attila Yilmaz, at a restaurant called Bazaar, is banning iPads and colouring in books for children, and also has been telling people no steak for you in reference to the Seinfeld soup Nazi. So 20-year-old comedic references, well, seem cutting edge to the readers of this rag, won't it? I apologise to the younger viewers of this who've never watched Seinfeld, and I wouldn't recommend you do it. And the Soup Nazi episode isn't even that particularly funny by any standards. Right, page 33, we have Sydney's sizzling hot summer dishes. Now that warm weather is almost here, winter menus can be torn up and a new range of dishes sent out to dazzle diners. Hot new must-try dishes for the summer. We have prawn toast. Prawn toast. Yeah, they're really setting the world on fire. We've got 2 steak tartares on the list. Oh, lobster and caviar. Whoa. Oh, apparently someone's replaced lobster meat with marron, which is basically a lobster. Small lobster, I'll grant you that. Oh, well, we've replaced the chicken with quail. Tuna carpaccio, there is nothing new or exciting. Fish charcuterie board. Kind of interesting. Looks a bit like a seafood platter. The Snitch, our Law and Order column with Ava Berry Morrison and Brendan Hills, is on more Matthew James Doyle and his $80 million cocaine smuggling ring sting. It has also highlighted the deeply interconnected nature of Sydney's elite social circles. They're all a bunch of bloody crims. So the Source, the political gossip column, has been renamed White Sauce in reference to a visit to the White House. Oh, the hijinks. And it's all about Paul Murray getting a minute with Donald Trump. Meet my good pal Paul. Then there's mention of the fact that there's Wi-Fi on Shark 1, which is ScoMo trying to show that he likes football and it might be a substitute for a personality. Hot tip, liking football has never been a substitute for a personality. I'm not saying no one who likes football has a personality. I am saying that liking football in and of itself is not a personality. A bit like being able to quote Monty Python. Also not a personality. So the world news is wrapped around the sport this week. Migrants are swamping a Greek island, so that's a good migrant bashing story. Protests kick on, and there is actually mention, buried here on page 38, of the global climate strike, although mostly they're covering the other cities. Now this is complicated because the lift out. Right, oh I see, and then they show that in China there was a very small protest because the Chinese aren't doing anything, so we shouldn't either. Muslims cancelled on a flight. Egypt rallies in anger. There's a Nigeria is air quotes not violent. So a bit of whistling there, isn't there? Sport. Giants into the final. Go team. The Greater North Canberra Giants. We're all very excited. As will surprise no one, we have retained the firm. Oh, here we go. The first home buyer's guide. We have got actual property sections. The top 20 places to start your property journey. It's a journey, it's an adventure, it's a lifestyle, it's a reflection of who you are. It's borrowing $500,000 so you can be the last one onto the last tier of a pyramid scheme. And let the boomers cash out. What an opportunity. How could you pass that up? Right, so there's lots of holiday ideas for wealthy old people who don't know how to use the internet to research their holidays. And the most dangerous thing is you're not going to get the really cool stuff because the really cool stuff doesn't need to advertise in the paper. So you're just going to get stuff that isn't very good that has to advertise to try and find customers. And I think that's going to give you a pretty bad holiday. Life is too short to read the body and soul section. More quizzes. You know, people who buy the newspaper for the quizzes are really perpetuating and encouraging a very dangerous media. And I think people should think more closely about that and just... I get crossword fans like to compete against each other and have the same crosswords to move against, but I really feel we could do like daily quizzes online and get people away. Maybe if we put topical news of the day questions into the crosswords. Having said that, a magazine I worked at did try and cut the crossword one week, and we had never received correspondence like it. That was the one bridge too far. So yeah, people like it. I just think we could do things better. Oh yeah, so the real estate is definitely back in the paper in a big way. Or I might add pushing, what are we pushing? Realestate.com.au, so, which I believe is a Murdoch-owned property. Dog torture is still encouraged in the pages of the Telegraph, which, considering that it puts itself out there as some sort of moral arbiter and guardian, really is pushing it a bit for me. Rugby, yes, the Wallabies won, and France beat Argentina by 2 points, which was very disappointing for me as it blew my multi. Yes, I gamble on sport. Only sport I know. Jessica Halloran's writing about how great the Roosters are. They've got culture because they're the rugby league team from the wealthy part of town. So US will defend Saudi oil and land. It's almost impossible to tell the difference between Saudi foreign policy and US foreign policy these days. Interestingly, they're now reporting that it was not just drones. The idea that it was a bunch of DJI Mavics that attacked that oil refinery with hand grenades gaffer taped to them was always ludicrous. They're now saying there were cruise missiles involved, which seems a lot more likely, doesn't it? Look, I'm going to ditch half the paper. We have flicked through it. I'm not shortchanging any of you. Peter Credlin says too many politicians are all talk and no action. Former chief of staff to a prime minister who achieved famously little of any good. I have a lot of time for New South Wales Deputy Premier and National Party leader John Barilaro. He's a no-frills former chippy who is decent and has abundant common sense. Last week, he blasted the state's Independent Planning Commission for kiboshing a new thermal coal mine because of its alleged impact on climate change, even though that's not their job. And before that, he's called for the fast-tracking of dams and an end to our nuclear power prohibition. I mean, it's not like the coal billionaires need a sock puppet called Peter Credlin, but they've got one anyway. Peter then says, would you turn up to a meeting where you weren't allowed to speak? Of common feeling for most of us, Peter. Not for Peter, obviously. And then she's saying, I don't think there's any greater humiliation, and made worse by the fact that you're then asked to pay billions just for the privilege. But that's what Australia is expected to do at the UN Climate Summit next week, now that Australia's been banned from speaking. Because of our disgusting behaviour that is making us a pariah on the world stage, Peter, maybe we should actually be doing something about climate change and shutting down the hand that's working your lips for you. Peter says, thumbs up to Ambassador Joe Hockey, deserves much of the credit for this weekend's state visit by the PM to the US. Many said he wasn't the diplomatic type, but for an unconventional White House, he's perfect, and we've never had better access to the Trump White House. At least the Trump White House can say no to our pedophile protectors. Thumbs down to the gullible students, the manipulative students, and silly parents protesting that the world will end from climate change in 2013. The surer better is that Australia's education's ranks will keep falling when the facts are displaced by hysteria. Wayne's delusions over defeat will keep singing Labor's swan song. Peter Gleeson has had his photo removed from the article. The Labor Party will forever be consigned to the political wilderness while Wayne Swan is party president. Yeah, take your advice from Peter Gleeson from Sky News. He's got your best interests at heart, Labor. Opinion, David Pemberthy says, in the same way that murderers are invariably described by their neighbours as quiet people who kept to themselves, a similarly mystified form of words is used to describe the many thousands of good people who have silently suffered from depression but been unable to endure the disease. I'm not sure comparing depression suicides to murderers is overly sympathetic, Pembo. Oh, God. Wow, that's a funny way to slip a new low in reporting. Lucy Kahn gets a page. She's the editor of Rendezvous, whatever the hell Rendezvous is, saying hysteria needs to take a cold shower and, the kids are just worked up. And then we get Piers Ackerman saying, climate strikers should heed lesson of 2012 and not be lured by Pied Piper. Yes, 2012 is the reference point we should be working from, Piers. Maybe Piers should learn some lessons from 2019, if he's heard of it. Claire Harvey is suggesting that John Ibrahim's girlfriend should break up with him, which it's nice to get page 87 relationship advice in the Sunday Telegraph, isn't it? Sunday Telegraph editorial is just talking about those cameras getting people off the phones, because Telegraph hates phones. It wants you to be reading newspapers. If people were reading newspapers while they were driving, which they don't, because newspapers are nowhere near as interesting as your phone, they'd be fine with that. Also, really, the only coverage of the climate strike is a bit of China bashing and saying how stupid the kids are. I mean, who do you think your future readers are? Do you think they're going to forgive you for this, Telegraph? I guess Rupert's horizons are narrowing. That could actually be a major problem with the New Zealand papers, is that Rupert isn't thinking about 20 years in the future the way he used to. But it's a bit of a worry if the world's most influential media baron no longer cares about the long-term future of humanity at all, because he's just not going to live that long. You'd think his sons might be starting to say, hang on, what are we doing here? But they can just put bomb collars on their security guards, can't they? So, what a wonderful future we're going to have. There's a new science fiction movie starring Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones called Ad Astra that's got 3.5 stars from the very normally hard markers at the Telegraph, so it's a good rating. Mind you, they have given the Angry Birds movie 3 stars. Oh, there's a new Rambo movie. That gets 1 star. It's a little Emmy preview saying Game of Thrones is going to clean up everything, which I guess if they can convince more people to fire up Foxtel to watch Game of Thrones, which is the best thing on Foxtel, with the possible exception of John Oliver. Wow, Duncan Lay wants star board directors should just shut up. Just shut up, put down your silly megaphone, walk away. Sit in your fancy director's chair and count your money. I don't usually give out advice. Well, to be more accurate, I don't usually give out good advice. No, Duncan, you do not. He's talking about directors talking about critical reception of their movies. Right, Liam Payne, who does not have an album out, just talking about himself with a couple of moody pictures. I think this is some sort of throw to the kids. We've got Washington Confidential just talking about how isn't it great that our brave leader is in America and they've let him into the house. Some real cultural cringe going on there. So Annette Sharp reckons Melissa Doyle's under threat in Channel 7 cost cutting. Apparently James Packer and... No, I'm sorry, this article's about Erica Packer. Sorry, really got confused there. She and her fiancé bonded over emotions. If only us little people could have emotions, we too could bond with wealthy people. So there's something about pool humping by the Bachelor helping Harry and Meghan in a way that I care not to explore. And the back page was still talking about Liam Payne and how he hasn't got an album. Okay, folks, and that's that's the news according to the Murdoch press. That's everything that you should know to see it be current for a week. You probably could have summarised the important news in this week's paper on the back of an envelope. I think there's about 6 bullet points in there. The rest is just, as usual, a whole bunch of distractions, so do not be distracted. Onwards and upwards. Thank you so much for listening all the way through, and I will endeavour to be back next week. See you then.